Welcome guys to the third episode in this series of Core Java, and today I'll run you all through some history of Core Java. It was developed by a person called as James Gosling in the year 1995. So he wasn't alone, it was his team, and they had started in the early 1990s. So it took them across approximate 5 years to develop this. Initially he had named it as Oak. Oak is a tree, a very tall tree, and then he renamed it to Java. So there are many speculations as to how the name Java came into existence. Then he named it Java. Java is for the coffee brand, so even the logo of Java is a coffee mug. So these are all speculations. There are many theories about it. We won't go in details about that. What I want to talk about is how did Java became so popular. Among many reasons, one of the biggest reason is its strong association with the internet. So Java's strong association with the internet made it very popular. So this is not a coincidence. Like if you see the rise of the internet since 1995. So since 1995, there's a very steep growth in the popularity of the internet. So one of the reasons Java became so popular was because it was adopted by the internet as its official programming language. Because before Java, the internet was only filled with static pages, just which would display simple images and simple texts. They weren't dynamic, there was no graphics, there was no animations. So with when it tied up with Java, when the internet and Java they both sort of embraced each other. So the popularity of the internet, so as the popularity of internet grew, similarly as they went hand in hand, the popularity of Java also grew, because with the help of Java, internet was able to support animation, graphics, and with wide range of special effects. So even we'll be studying those special effects, how to make such graphics. So we have a topic called like Java applets coming up. In this topic, we'll study how to make small animations, small graphics. We also have practical slips based on this topic. So uh, these are your features of Java. There are many features. What I want to talk in this session is what was the feature of Java which the internet liked so much that it adopted Java. So at the core, we have among these features, there are about 16 to 17 features mentioned up. These are all features. Some features will be studying in core Java and some features will be studying in advanced Java. So features like multi-threading, this we will study in advanced Java in the 6th semester. So of all these features, the feature which are at the core of Java are the object oriented approach of Java and its portable feature. So object oriented features, we know what are object oriented features. We studied that in C++, like class. So these are your OOPS features of OOPS, object oriented programming characteristics, class, object, inheritance, polymorphism, data abstraction, data encapsulation, so on and so forth, blah blah blah. But with portable feature, what do I mean by Java? When people ask what is Java, what do you mean by Java is portable, Java is platform independent? Means Java code can be run on several platforms. Example: Windows, Linux, Sun, Solaris, Mac OS, blah 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 blah. Many. So the code can the developer sitting in the US in New Jersey is using a Mac operating system to develop the Java code. So as so if let's say we have a website. So the developer of that website is sitting where? In the US, developing that site on his system, and his system might be a Mac operating system using your Intel CPU. Intel, earlier Motorola would make CPUs for Mac, but now they are using CPUs made by Intel also. So this combination of your operating system and the CPU is called as a platform. So in short, if I would summarize what is a platform, so when they say Java is platform independent, what is a platform? First of all, platform is a combination of your CPU. Normally the CPU generation or the CPU family, to which family the CPU belongs, because we have two very prominent. Okay, so what CPU? The combination of CPU and the operating system. So usually, when I mean CPU, I mean the generation or the family of the CPU. So we have a 8086 family, which is normally referred as x86, which we also call as 32-bit CPU. These are all your vintage sort of CPUs, which are outdated. Very few machines use 32-bit nowadays. In 2020, very few machines are running on 32-bit. All have switched, migrated to 64-bit. And then you have a 64-bit family of CPUs. So the platform is the CPU family. So if CPU, I would shortlist which family the CPU belongs. So does it belong to the 8086, which is also called as the x86, or which is also called as 32-bit CPU, and which OS are we using? So OS, we all know the many vendors who manufacture OS. With Microsoft is one of them. Microsoft is a very prominent vendor who manufactures OS. Windows is the product of Microsoft. Then we have Mac OS for Apple systems. Then we have Linux OS. Then we have Solaris. The vendor of Solaris is Sun. Sun is the company. Sun is the company which was earlier the parent company of Java. So earlier Java was owned by Sun Microsystems. Then it was bought by, so Sun was then purchased by Oracle. Like earlier we had WhatsApp, then Facebook purchased WhatsApp, right? So earlier Java was owned by Sun Microsystems. Java was owned by Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystem was then acquired by Oracle. So now Oracle is the owner of Java. So Sun also has its operating system. It is called as Solaris. So this is the operating system for the vendor, the manufacturer of this operating system is Sun. So we have different CPU families as mentioned, and we have different operating systems. So the combination of this CPU and this OS is your platform. And Java is platform independent, or also known as portable. The platform independent and portable is synonyms, one and the same. So how does Java achieve this feature of being platform independent? How come a code which is written? So what I mean by platform independent is, I'll just show you a small sort of image that should make things clear what I mean by. So let's understand this diagram first. What is platform independent feature of Java is the code can be written and compiled on a machine A, but can be executed on a different machine called machine B. So this code can be transferred. Code is transferred to a different machine. So this code is portable. It's like a mobile phone, right? You can take it from one room to another, one building to another, not like your landline phone which is stuck at one place. So earlier programming languages were sort of very static. So the code had to be written, compiled, and executed on the same very machine. But what Java does is Java makes it portable. Means the code is written on one machine, it is compiled on that machine, but it is executed on a different machine. So the code is written and compiled in the US by the developer who's sitting in New Jersey or sitting in California. He is writing and compiling the code to check whether there are any errors or not. But that code is then placed on the internet and is being run by a person sitting in Pune. So this is called as portability feature of Java. Now how does it achieve that portability? We need to understand this. So to achieve this portability, Java goes through a two-phase compilation process, a two-stage compilation process. So Java is a compiled language, we all know that, but it goes through a double-stage compiling to achieve platform independence or portability feature. This diagram should explain this. Yeah. So yeah. So first, the source code which we write. I've shown you all some source code earlier. In the previous session, in the episode 2, we had written run a hello world program. This was a hello world program which we had written. So this is your source code. This source code first needs to be compiled, right? The source code first needs to be compiled. The source code has extension .java. So if you are first, I request you all to go through the episode 2 video, so you'll understand what is this .java and .class file means. If you're not understanding what is .java .class, I request you all to first view the episode 2 of this series, then things will be clear. So the source code has an extension .java. This source code then is compiled with the help of the Java compiler, the Java C, and is then converted to the .class file. This .class file is the byte code. It is not the executable code. Byte code is not executable. Byte code is just an intermediate code. Byte code is just a intermediate code, as mentioned over here. So the code is written and it is compiled to a byte code. This byte code is then transferred and then is executed later on. So in the first stage, what happens is, in the first stage, your source code is compiled to a byte code. That byte code has extension .class. Byte code is not an executable code. Byte code is just an intermediate code. Now this byte code is then, with the help of a JVM, is converted to executable code in the second stage. So this is two phases of compilation. Compiler is a sort of a translator. It translates the code from one language to another. So if in one word you go to explain compiler, so you can explain compiler as a translator. So you have these English to German translators, the delegates, the politicians, if they are traveling abroad, so they carry translators with them, right? So compiler is a translator. Compiler converts the code from one language to another language. Here it converts it from source code to byte code. And here again the JVM also has a compiler called as JIT, just in time. That JIT converts the .class to the .exe code, the executable code. So Java goes through these two phases of compilation, which helps it to achieve portability. Now this byte code is platform independent. Byte code is platform independent, means it can be executed on different platforms. So Java uses this logic: write once and run anywhere. So once the code is compiled to byte code, this byte code can be shipped to a different machine, and that machine will then execute the byte code. This is how Java achieves its portability. So here the code is compiled in Windows OS. The machine which is compiling the code is running on Windows OS, but the machine which is running the code is running maybe on Linux, maybe on Mac. Stage 2 also explained. Now the catch over here is, what does the JVM do? Yeah, so this is a very important concept to understand. JVM. So JVM is called as Java Virtual Machine. It stands for Java Virtual Machine. We'll discuss that. So once now the bytecodes is generated, and then that bytecodes go to the JVM, and the JVM then convert that bytecode to the executable code. Now what is a JVM? We'll see. So that is called as a Java Virtual Machine. VM stands for Virtual Machine. Virtual, we have tangible and intangible. Okay, what we can touch and feel is physical. What we cannot touch and feel is virtual. So if a human body is there, it has few tangible features, few intangible features. Weight is tangible feature, you can measure weight, right? Height is tangible feature, you can measure height. But there are few features which are intangible, which cannot be measured by any instrument. Like beauty is intangible, sincerity is intangible, loyalty is intangible. So physical VM, so we have so this black color border is your physical machine, your physical laptop or your physical desktop, which has memory, which has hard disk, which has input output devices. Within this physical device we have a virtual machine also. This the black boundary is your physical machine, which is tangible, you can touch and feel that. Within that machine you have one more machine, that is called as a virtual machine, and in Java's case it is called as Java Virtual Machine, that is called as JVM. So all the execution of the program is done by this machine, which is a virtual, which is a machine within a machine. So this laptop has, so in the below diagram, it's, this will make things more clear, I guess. Physical machine, your desktop or your laptop has hardware, has your software. So your laptop has a CPU, Core i3, Core i5, Core i7, has a RAM 4 GB, 6 GB, 8 GB, has hard disk 500 GB, 1 TB, 2 TB, has input output devices, keyboard, mouse, monitor, has operating system Windows 7, Windows 10, and has some application installed on that. So this forms your proper physical machine or desktop or the laptop. Now on top of this physical machine you have a JVM, you have a virtual machine installed. So if you have to run a Java program on this physical machine, on this laptop, you have to install a virtual machine, that is called a Java Virtual Machine, which also has its CPU, virtual CPU, has a virtual CPU, has an interpreter, has a JIT compiler as mentioned above. So these are components of a JVM. Three prominent components of your JVM are the virtual CPU, the interpreter, and the JIT compiler. And your Java programs are executed by this JVM, which is installed on top of the physical machine. So the interpreter, what does it do? It reads the byte code line by line and then executes it. And the just-in-time compiler, what does the just-in-time compiler do? As discussed earlier, it converts the byte code to the machine code. Perfect. Now JVMs are platform dependent. The JVM is platform independent. Java is not platform independent. They are two different things. JVM is your virtual machine, right? So what is a platform? As mentioned earlier, platform is a combination of your CPU and your OS. So this machine, let's say machine X, this is a machine A, is having platform of the CPU is from Intel and the OS is from Windows. So this is a Wintel platform. This is a very prominent platform called as Wintel. Wintel means the OS from Windows and the CPU from Intel. A very famous platform for desktops and laptops. And this machine B, this machine A is, let's say, in Pune, and machine B is in Bangalore. So let's say A stands for Aurangabad and B stands for Bangalore. So machine A is in Aurangabad and this machine A is having this is on this platform. Machine B has a AMD CPU. This is also a company which manufactures CPU. Apart, there are many other companies. HP is one of them. Motorola is one of them. IBM is another vendor, manufacturer of CPUs. Intel has a major share, major chunk of CPUs in the market. And Linux is the operating system. We have heard of Linux operating system. So this machine is on platform B. So platform A and platform B, they will be different JVMs for each platform. This you got to understand. Each platform has a different JVM. So if you go to the Oracle website to download Java, yeah, if you go to this official website of Oracle to download Java, you will see that they have JVMs for each platform. Linux 32, Linux 64, Windows 86 means Windows 32, Windows 64, Mac 64, Solaris 64. So each platform has a different JVM. So this is a platform A has a JVM X, and this is platform B will have a JVM Y. So you got to be alert while installing the JVM for your machine. So you should know what is the bit of your CPU and how much and which windows are you using. So people have got queries. People with Windows 7 64-bit and people with Windows 10 64-bit are having two different JVMs. So I've shared the link in my episode 1 of all those JVMs which are uploaded on my Google Drive. So this is a virtual machine which sits on top of your physical machine and is platform dependent. Each platform will have its own JVM. So you got to install that JVM, and then that JVM will help you to run your Java program. So as both the machines have JVM, so the code written on this platform, so this JVM will compile it, and then we transfer the code, and this JVM will run that code for you. So as they both are Java virtual machines, they both are synced with each other. So when we install JDK, JDK comes with two components, right? We have a JRE and we also have a JDK. So at the core is your JVM and so all the Java programs are run by whom? The Java programs are run by the JVM, which provides runtime environment for your Java programs. Then you have JRE. So if you are only running the programs, not creating it, so this too is sufficient for you. JVM and JRE is sufficient if you are not developing the Java code, if you are just using the Java code. Like how we are only using Facebook, we are only using WhatsApp, we are not developing WhatsApp, we are not developing Facebook. So if you are just using to run Java codes, then the JVM and JRE is sufficient for you because you are just executing the Java code. But if you are developing also, like how we will do in the lab, we ourselves will develop our own code and we will run that code to get the output. So you also need a JDK. So at the core is your JVM, which is the runtime environment. This JVM with a addition of some set of libraries to run that code forms your JRE, and this JRE with some development tools. So you need a compiler, you need a debugger. So if you have these tools, then you can develop your own Java code also. So this is the hierarchy, and this is the relationship between JVM, JRE, and JDK. This is normally very confusing. I've tried to make it as sugar coated as possible for you all to digest it. So at the core is your JVM. JVM with some set of libraries forms the JRE, and with some development tools forms the JDK. So this is how it achieves its portability. So the code is written on this machine, compiled on this machine, then the bytecode is sent, and then the JVM of machine A is compiling it and converting it to bytecode, and the JVM of machine B is executing that code. So both the machines should have compulsory a JVM installed, then only the code can be portable. So you got to have JVM for both the machines, and JVM is platform dependent. Each platform has a separate JVM. So first, while downloading the JVM, you should know your platform in detail. I hope this video helps you all in a better understanding of what is a JVM.